disclosures like those emails from top Clinton advisors stolen and released by WikiLeaks.
So today, I guess WikiLeaks, it sounds like, is going to be dropping some more. And if we met tomorrow, I'll tell you about it tomorrow.
And if you think 3 campaign rallies a day sounds like a lot, Trump campaign officials say they may ratchet up the GOP nominee schedule to 4 or 5 rallies a day at the end of this week. That would come after a key speech scheduled for tomorrow in Pennsylvania from Trump's wife, Melania Wolf. And he's also getting some help from an old foe. Senator Ted Cruz, one of his rivals from the primaries, is scheduled to be out on the campaign trail with Mike Pence in Iowa and Michigan tomorrow. Wolf.
All right, Jim, thank you. Jim Acosta reporting from Orlando, Florida. We're back with Cornell William Brooks, the president and CEO of the NAACP. You just heard Trump and his campaign now disavowing the support of the Ku Klux Klan, that editorial endorsing him, other white nationalist members and groups. Well, why do you think these folks are sort of drawn to Trump and they're supporting him?
Here's what I would note. I mean, when you have a campaign that's spoken openly about creating a xenophobic wall on the Mexican-American border, where you have a campaign whose members have literally cyber-attacked journalists with anti-Semitic rants, where you have a campaign that's lifted up guttural, misogynistic commentary about women, where you have a campaign that stuttered and stammered with respect to the support of the Klan initially. The point being here is there are people in this country who hear what's coming out of that campaign and they think that he's speaking to them and their values as opposed to us and our values as a country, the majority of Americans. And so the point being, it's not just whether or not you reject an endorsement. The issue is whether or not you reject the platform and reject the values. The point being here is stop demeaning women. Stop demeaning Muslims. Stop demeaning Jews and African Americans. Lift this campaign out of the gutter and speak with specificity and clarity as to what you're going to do. That's what the people are calling for in this country. And so when in fact you lift up a platform for a new deal for African Americans in a room without African Americans, and with a platform and on a platform without specifics, you insult our intelligence and literally demean our character. And so the fact of the matter is, this campaign has veered morally off course. I'm not entirely sure if it's ever been on course, but what I do know is much of what it says and lifts up is offensive to most people in this country.
He says the Democratic Party gives lip service to the African American community every 4 years, but then does nothing really to help them. And he, in all of his speeches, basically, he then says to the African American community, I want your support. What do you have to lose? Right now you can't, he says, walk down a street in some of the inner cities without getting shot if you want to go and buy some bread. You hear him say that.
Yes, yes. We've heard Mr. Trump say this. And when he asked the question, what do you have to lose? Well, when you offer zero in terms of specifics, zero in terms of policy prescriptions that speak to the needs of the African American community in particular and America more broadly, it's a problem. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just the substance, obvious lack thereof, but it's also the tone of this campaign. And so the point being here is, it's not enough to simply say, brag about the fact that you have African American support, though we don't see it, that you have Latino support, though we don't see it, where you have 20% of the support of the of the minority electorate in this country. It's not enough. The point being here is, the race for the presidency is a reflection of the character of the country, and that means we deserve a serious response. And I just note here, when you talk about black people as though they are like political pawns of a campaign, non-African Americans note that and are offended by it.
Are you surprised that the race is as tight as it is right now?
I think that's a measure of the economic anxiety in the country, the polarization in the country. But ultimately, I believe that people are going to vote their hopes, not just their fears, and it's not unusual for a race to tighten on the eve of an election.
You mentioned earlier an African-American church in Mississippi was set on fire, and then someone wrote the graffiti, "Vote Trump." Have you spoken to folks in Mississippi? I know you're the president and CEO of the NAACP. Do you have any specific information on who may have done this?
We have no specific information about who has done this. We're in touch with our colleagues colleagues in Mississippi, the Mississippi State Conference led by President Derrick Johnson. But let me note this. This tradition, there's an ugly tradition in this country of targeting churches. We saw this with the history of the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. Whoever did this is not funny, it's not amusing, it's dangerous and disgusting. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't just a church that was desecrated, literally the whole of our democracy, because we don't burn churches, we don't burn synagogues, we don't target people's houses of worship, and partisan graffiti has no place on the side of a church. And note here, it's not just the graffiti. This church was burned. This is some place that people go on a Sunday to seek their God. And for it to become a subject of arson is absolutely disgraceful. But I believe people are going to surround that congregation. We will come together as a country, and our values are going to go forward and be vindicated. One
quick final question. You invited Donald Trump earlier this year to attend the NAACP convention, but I think it was in Cincinnati.
That's right.
And he declined. Hillary Clinton, of course, accepted the invitation. Do you think it would have been different if he would have come to the NAACP and made his speech and met with folks there?
I think it would have been better, because at the end of the day, there's a blank slate. He's not spoken to the African American community except in certain orchestrated ways where we've been largely absent. Now, we're the nation's largest and oldest African American, I should say, largest and oldest civil rights organization in the country. So for you to decline not just one invitation, the invitation to the convention, but even to meet with us, he's not done that. And so, again, we see a kind of racial patronizing in terms of this campaign. And we're on the eve of this election, and we've not really heard specifics, and we've not heard, I would say, the caliber of a campaign that one would expect.
Cornell, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Cornell William Brooks is the president and CEO of the NAACP. Sensitive moment right now. We're going to have more on the breaking news coming up. We're taking a closer look at our new polls out tonight. They show the race tightening in some of the critical battleground states.